Yes, welcome to this month's Global Dev Communicators Connect. We're glad to have you here. We begin each one of our sessions with a question about what is stirring our souls right now. What is giving us life? What is giving us inspiration, particularly when so much of the world feels heavy at the moment and maybe always, and we are full of work pressures and constraints, and what's the thing that actually is lifting you and giving you some desire and some spice and some drive and fire to keep going. And we every month we put these into a document, which I'm putting in the chat now, and just asking each one of you to introduce yourselves today via the chat as well. Who are you and where are you in the world? And what is a piece of, maybe it's art or writing or just some music or performance that you've been to recently that is stirring your soul. And if you want to share some links for that, we'll be happy to include that in our soul stirring curated Google Doc so that we can always dip into the inspiration. I will share as part of my welcome today that I am participating this month in a initiative called Februlage, and it's a prompt each day of February to do some collage. Today's theme or prompt is chocolate. I was feeling really quite uninspired about chocolate today. And then I remembered I used to work at Oxfam during the Behind the Brands campaign, where we confronted the big chocolate makers in Europe and the US to change their practices with regards to, women West African farmers who are actually the main growers of the cacao. So I'm going to try to make something in homage to that campaign I was part of, and the fact that it goes from pod to bar, and there's lots of people and steps in between that. So I'm trying to figure out how to represent that via collage. This is the hashtag I'm putting in the chat if anybody wants to check out. Yesterday's prompt was exit. It's been mushroom. It's not always food. It's all kinds of strange things, but it's been really fun. And I'll now turn to Joanne. What's stirring your soul lately, Joanne?
Well, first of all, I just want to welcome everyone again. We're so happy that you're making the time to be here today with us. And what is stirring my soul at the moment is, for the longest time, I heard a lot of people talking about manifesting. And then I listened to a podcast episode, Jay Shetty interviewing Roxy Nafusi, who calls herself a manifesting coach. So I picked up her book, and it's an audiobook. So it's my second time just working through a book, an audiobook, and that is a whole other experience. But I just like how the whole idea of manifesting is being broken down, and the possibilities in my mind that are kind of opening up. I'm like, wow, there's so much I can do with my mind. So that is stirring my soul quite often. Yeah. And Vidushi, we'd love to hear as well, what is stirring your soul at the moment?
Thank you, Joan, for give me that recommendation of that book. It sounds super interesting. And I'm also super interested in learning to manifest. I think what is stirring my soul currently is I'm recently back from an amazing trip from a desert. And it's been very long that I have traveled for leisure without my laptop. And this last week, I was able to do that, and it was amazing. And it was like my stolen time from the rest of the world. And I could appreciate so much. I could appreciate the place that I live in, and I realized I should give it more credit than I already do. It's so beautiful. And I saw majestic landscapes and wide, long deserts, and it was beautiful. It was so amazing.
Awesome.
And now, Christine, do you want to share what is stirring your soul currently?
It's kind of interesting because I'm also just sort of super tired and haven't really been thinking in those terms. And so we get this question every month in this session. And so I should have been prepared. But so I've been sort of holding myself together for work, and it's been nice to play with this line that is our tagline, which is because we need each other. My organization is Child Fund International. It's one of the child sponsorship organizations, and we have a long way to go to really embody that line, but people are embracing it, and it's just coming up. And I just love, listening to a podcast that's completely unrelated to the organization, and have somebody say, because we need each other, and it's you can't argue with it, right? Something new comes to me from it. Every once in a while I'll just, we need each other, period, but we need each other safe, we need each other strong, we need each other kind, curious, brave, honest, hopeful, generous, disciplined, free, whole. So even just talking about that made me feel a little better today. So
Thanks for sharing.
I have a COVID ward in my basement right now with my son and his girlfriend. It's just dumb, but yes. So
well, what a brilliant transformation.
a little bit about this.
It's such a good start, and to me it really is related to why we're gathered here today. Thank you, Ellie, for also sharing that illustration in the chat. I want to encourage you all to keep introducing yourselves in the chat and sharing what's stirring your soul. And I want to just sort of reiterate why we're here. Why do we actually come together each month? We created this space back in 2021, 2021, a couple years ago. Because we really wanted a community where we can all kind of feel supported in our work in terms of ushering in narrative change. And so, to really get into the words of the taglines and how do we actually affirm our values to each other and build each other up, and sort of break this notion of, how do we harvest that wisdom around what it means to kind of go from charity to solidarity. And we all have some wisdom about that. We all have some knowledge, some ideas. We're doing that in a practical way, but also a visionary way in this group. And so we really welcome everyone who's here. And part of why we have this wonderful guest today, Fiduci, is because we want this space to help us explore our own creativity. We actually think that's really important to individual and collective healing. And we really believe that imagination shapes our leadership. So what's the kind of leadership we want is imaginative, right? So just a couple ideas that guide us as we get started, and we share this each time, just to set some ground rules and set the container for all of us. The first is that we are here to learn today. This is not a space of critique. So much of our organizational lives and our educational privilege is about finding the problem and solving the problem, but we're just here to learn today. We create a brave, but not necessarily a safe space, because we also want to be challenged and we want to be pushed outside of our comfort zones, because that's where it gets interesting. We try to operate by consent, and so we invite you into these activities today, but it's all opt in and opt out. And as hosts, we want to obtain permission rather than assume, because that happens way too much anyway in our professional lives. We ask everyone to speak from the I as much as possible, rather than the rhetorical we that is so endemic to our sector. We're not here to generalize. We're not here to assume that there's a universal lived experience, given that we have tremendous differences on this call. not just in terms of location, but ethnicity and race and gender and wealth and, sexual orientation. These are all things that we're bringing that add a lot of depth, and we don't want to erase that. And finally, this is the best part of Global Dev Communicators Connect for me, is that you don't have to know what you're going to say. You can say it imperfectly. You can show up authentically, because as communicators, we have to be so precise most of the time. This is the time where we can actually just be whole and untested and unpolished. So also going to share, Zoom fatigue is real. Do whatever you need to do to be comfortable and present. Cameras on, cameras off. We love to see your face, but of course, and feel your presence in that way. But please, however you want to show up today is welcome. And thank you, Catalina, and Emma's here, and Tracy's here, and Gail. Thank you so much for being here. Just really, really excited to have you all. Okay, so with that, we will have a brief grounding today. Another aspect of how we try to hold space at Healing Solidarity is to reconnect with the wisdom of our bodies and our breath. And we do this intentionally with a political point of view, because the oppressive systems that we are all navigating really seek to disconnect us from ourselves and from each other and from the places where we are. And so if this feels safe and available to you today, I'm just going to invite you to slow your pace and arrive and take notice of your breath. And I'm going to do it with you. I'm going to take a deeper breath. And just listen to this poem, a very brief poem. And it's one that was really inspirational to me in the early part of my career. It was written probably in the late 90s, early 2000s by Okitoi-Heisig, who was, I think, at the Ford Foundation back then. But the poem is entitled Query. So just as I share this, just keep breathing and keep arriving. Query. We are a developing country, you say. That we need time to mature, unity to develop, discipline to compete. When we have time, unity, and discipline, and before we mature, develop, and compete, can we dance, dream, struggle? Can we resist your folly with justice? It's just so brilliant and brief and precise. Like, those choices are very precise, and I really still, I keep that always by my desk still. So wanted to share it with you. Welcome, Jen. And now I'm going to hand over to Joanne to introduce our guest. And I'm going to make Vidushi the host as well this time. Thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer. Oh, what a wonderful poem, just to usher us into this amazing presentation that Vidushi is also going to be sharing with us. So Vidushi is a South Asian feminist artivist. She's an illustrator and a visual designer. Her work revolves around gender justice, South Asian identity, access, and rights-based content. She's been a communication and design consultant at multiple women's rights organizations, including but not limited to the Association for Women's Rights in Development, Plan International, the Frida Fund, Oxfam International Urgent Action Fund Asia and Pacific, Urgent Action Sisters Funds, GAGGA, Center for Feminist Foreign Policy in Berlin, Collective Impact, and other prominent women's rights organizations worldwide. And she works from her quaint studio in Jaipur, India, with her team that includes disability rights activists, women of color, queer folks, passionate about making the world an inclusive place, one image at a time. If you haven't had a chance to get a glimpse of Vidushi's work, you need to run to her Instagram account or just follow her on LinkedIn, because I've been drooling over the illustrations and I'm just convincing everyone in the office. I'm like, look, you all think trade is a complicated subject? No, but there is someone who is also doing illustrations and things like digital rights and literacy, so it can be done. Vidushi, thank you so much for being here, and it's just an honor to hear from you and to learn from you and to discover the possibilities that your work also offers for us in the narrative change work that we all so desire to see and to work towards in the sector. And with that, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Joan, for introducing me. Can everybody hear me all right and see my screen? Okay, amazing. Is the size okay for the okay, amazing. So so I have a presentation, but it's pretty fun because it's all full of images, and I realized that because my work is so visual, I cannot just talk, I have to show you something. So I prepared it, but it's pretty flexible, and you can stop me anywhere and we can discuss if any artwork or anything speaks to you particularly, or you want to say something. I'm happy to do that. And this is roughly what my plan is, to discuss how my journey has been so far to sort of, challenge visual narratives that we all are surrounded with, and especially in humanitarian and development sector, but in general also. And so this is just a hi. And like you said, I stay in India, and I deeply connect with my South Asian identity, especially Indian identity, and especially the place I come from. And I think that has contributed a lot, especially in the way I see things and in the way I see people, and how how their stories come to me, how I would want to tell their stories, or tell my stories, or stories of my people, my grandparents, my mothers, and all of their stories. And I come from a community which in India has been systemically erased from a lot of places, and we were not allowed to enter in a lot of places in because of certain class restrictions, caste restrictions. And I have spent a lot of time hanging out with people who we see, especially on all these development websites, and their pictures and their all the communications related to them. And I realized there's a huge gap in the way I see my people, or people around me, or how I have hung out with them, how I know them, how I sort of connect with their stories, and how those stories are told. And as an artist, this was even when I was very young and I was just discovering what I'm going to do in life. This became a very important question or an inquiry in my practice. And this is just very early work that I've done. I think 10 years back or so, but I have included this because this was, I think, a turning point, or an important event in my image making practice. This was a project that I was doing with a leading organization, and at that time I was working in publications and I was making children's storybooks and all of that. And this was a project where I was working with, it was about juvenile justice, and I was working with a community of rag pickers. So I went for research in that community, and rag pickers is a community, especially in India. The waste management is a very informal sector in India, where there's a whole community and their children, everybody in their family are doing the job of segregating the waste and selling whatever can be recycled or whatever, and making money. That's their job, basically. So I was, in my research, I was hanging out with these kids because I was making images. I had to make images for them. So I was just trying, chilling, playing with them and all of that. And the images that came out of that research process had a lot of joy. And of course, it had a lot of reality of those kids. Like if you see very thin kids with very oversized clothes, but having fun. There was like, they're playing with whatever, they're playing with the pipe, and there was one illustration which was based on this image that I saw, that a young girl was playing with a skate. She found one skate and she made another skate with some can or something, and she was playing with that. And all of that joy sort of transferred in those images. And these images did not make it to the final publication. And then I saw the images that was published, and those images were images which nobody related to, which I as a person did not relate to, which the kids of that community would not relate to. It had everything that their life is not about. And it was like I portrayed them as a fully, like, having a human experience with whatever reality they have. I'm not saying they're not marginalized or they're not systemically very erased from a couple of places and all of that. And there is a layer of caste reality also with them, because it's a certain community which is doing this work for generations. So all of that was there. But this organization, they had put such pity-inducing images, and which had nothing to do with their reality. And so that was first experience that I had. And this was long back, but I realized there was a huge gap. And another experience that I had was something around this time, that I had to, so it was a project about nutrition, and I had to draw a plate of chicken, of a chicken dish or whatever. So I had, so the way I eat or the way I interact with the food, I had made that, and none of the kids could identify them as food or as chicken, because the parts of the chicken that they eat is different than the parts of the chicken that I, as slightly richer class, would do than them. And that was also a very interesting observation for me as a very young artist, as a very early experience, that I cannot assume anything. And the context is very important. The research is very important. And I have to sort of ask this question that, who am I creating it for? So these were just some early on experiences. And then I also was feeling this in my own life when I'm surrounded with these amazing women, who can be my mothers, my aunts, my grandmothers. And when we talk about them, or when organizations talk about them, uh, it's not an authentic story. And so it is very important that who is telling that story and who is it telling it for, like whose gaze and for whose eyes these stories are created. So I initially I was just making whatever I saw. And this is my mother. She has this ritual of, stitching her saris and all of that. So I was just creating what I saw. But I saw a lot of queer Desi couples around me, like Indian queer couples. And it's interesting because most of the time it's a closeted interaction. Like you would see some very micro gestures, or maybe not, some very loving gestures, or maybe not. But it's interesting that in this society, all of this exists within layers and the nuances of all of that. So I started sort of capturing that. And these were just my personal work and my initial work and whatever I was doing, my interaction with my mother. I started dropping in, symbols like this oil box is a symbol which people in India will understand because it goes way long. Like, this is the oil that probably my grandmother used, my mom used, and so many of my friends' families also use this for generations. This is the fan that looks very similar to fans that probably my grandma would have in her house. So these became a symbol to drop. Where is this based? Whose story is it? And all of that. And I also started getting, and I was of course posting it on social media. And I started getting these comments where people are saying that, oh my God, this is so amazing. This reminded me of my grandma's place. And this has such a summer vacation feeling and all of that. So it was just a fun exercise for me. I also was reacting to what I saw around me. So for example, this image in the left, this has a lot of context if you belong to, I don't know, it may be in a lot of other cultures also, but in India, the early morning ritual of almost every family is the father or the male member reading the newspaper with a cup of tea or a coffee, and the women of the house, they are running around and making the kids ready for school and preparing their lunch and breakfast and all of that. So they are running around, and the father or the male member of the house is sitting with their legs up and chilling. So I sort of flipped the situation, and I made the mom sitting and reading the newspaper and stuff like that. So I started sort of reacting to what I saw around me with images. And again, like I started creating images in this way. Another thing that, I cannot like lie on grass and read book like this, but it's definitely what I would want to do. So I started creating images as a reaction to all those feelings. And it's also a question about why not, because I would see that in public parks, a lot of men would do this, and probably not completely naked, but they will be very comfortable in public places, which would not be so accessible to me as a woman. So I started reacting to those things with those feelings, or those things with images. Then I also there was a political movement in India where the farmers' rights were the laws were being changed in a way that they will have a very difficult future, and they will earning money for them will become very difficult for farmers. So I would react with, like, I had a memory of a man who would come and sell carpets to my door, like a door-to-door sales guy, and he would walk for many miles. He would walk for, like, he would walk from one state to another to sell those carpets, and he would tell me as a child a lot of stories. So and he was a farmer, and he would sell carpets when it's not the season, or when his business is down and stuff like that. So when this was happening, I started creating a story with my memory of that. And so I started reacting to those political resistant movements that were happening in India. This was the story of a woman who would sit in a corner of the road, and next to the pile of garbage, which was very stinky, but she had a flower shop, and she would make flower necklaces or garlands or something that you'll put in your hair. And she would have a nice little DIY kind of a shop with her saris hanging, and like really pretty colorful flowers, and she's busy making all those garlands, and within a couple of hours she would go. So and she was a migrant worker in my city. When COVID was here, there was a urgent lockdown in India, and all the migrant workers had to sort of, without any transport, they had to walk across India, and it was like a big, exodus of migrants. So I had a brief interaction with this person, Sargam, and so I wrote a story about her. I sort of made an image, and in the story I've written that I don't know what happened to her, or where is she safe or not, but I hear so many horrible news about migrant workers, and I hope she's safe. And for me, her presence next to a garbage was such a symbolic sight, especially because she was making all those beautiful garlands, and she was sitting next to a construction garbage, which was man-made, of course. So all of that. So these were essentially my personal work and my personal reaction to my immediate surroundings. I was lucky enough to sort of find organizations who were interested in whatever I was saying with my work. And I was making annual reports, I was making images for them. And with the same approach of investigating the gaze, like investigating whose these images, like whose stories are these, and for whose eyes are these stories, like who's going to consume these stories. This was one of such lesson that I had while I was illustrating a project which was based in the Amazon. And naturally, like when I got this project, it was amazing, and I was so happy that I sort of, like, Amazon in my head is a beautiful mystical place, and I started drawing, translating that feeling with all that mystery and magic and all of that. And I was also researching that what my images can do, or what will be the repercussions, or what would be the consequences, or how they will be read by other people. And I realized that my images are further mystifying and making them as a distant people, and not portraying them as real people in a real place. Instead, putting them, in a like Amazon is not a holiday vacation spot, right? So it's a place which is very alive, and people are depending on that place, and those people have some real challenges. And I realized that making, so the color palettes, even the smallest thing, the color palettes and all the fireflies and all the magical things that I was putting in was further mystifying it. So I sort of like changed the project midway, and I realized that in this case, especially in this context, it's very important to be very grounded in realism and all of that. So yeah, I also realized that context plays such an important role, and it is like making images is such a research heavy job, and you should research with the eyes, with the gaze, where you are ready to learn, you're ready to listen, and you know that you may not know the best way, and you should also know that what is your story to tell and what is not your story to tell, and when you should pass the mic, and when you should make space for other experiences to come in. Another very important observation that I had was this was the time when India, there was a very sensational portrayal of a rape that happened in India. And there were many layers again to this. This was a lower caste girl. This was a lower caste girl raped by upper caste men. So there were many layers to it. But media had made it such a sensational case, and it was almost horrific to see how they were talking about this girl. And and I didn't know what is the right way, but I knew that there is something wrong with it. Like, you cannot talk about something so sensitive like this, and just because it gives you viewership and all of that. So I started researching about it, and I realized that most of the portrayals of sexual assault is so sensationalized. It's not just this case, but most of these are so sensationalized because of course it gives you eyeballs. Like, people will see it, and it sort of like triggers something else in us. And I also researched that in a lot of movies, these cases, the rape scenes are, or sexual assault scenes are filmed from the perspective of the perpetrator, which means they make the audience the perpetrator, the first person's perspective. And so I realized that this is so wrong, and why nobody questions it. And why do we want to sort of portray a woman's moment of violation? So in this case, this girl was going to cut some grass from the field, and somewhere around that time she was attacked. So I realized I wanted to draw something. I still do not know if this is the best way to sort of portray this, but I know what is the wrong way to do this. And I sort of like, I chose to draw a place where she was happy. Like, she was sort of running around the field and trying to cut the grass before she was attacked. And why would I want to focus on that moment of violation? She had a full life, and she had a full life experience. Like, she had a human experience. And although it was stolen away and all of that, and it's horrible, but what are we doing when we are overly focusing on that, when we are the images that, like, this is one simple Google search, and images like these, I have not even put too much effort in finding images of sexual assault. This is what is there in Google. And it made me think that why do we want the representation of something so traumatic and something so sensitive to be like that? So so that was one. Then questioning that whose story are we telling and for whom, and like whom do these stories belong? And then I started sort of like, and that has always been my question when I work with organizations. This was the cover picture for Feminist Realities Toolkit for AVID. And I'm going to quickly run through because I want to have some time for questions. This was for Frida, again, AVID. This was for the pluribus that I created for Frida. Quickly, this painting is inspired by Henry Matisse's dance. And I made a feminist version of it. I created the pluribus. It's go and check it out. It's pretty magical and fun. I also started creating, sort of dropping those symbols of where these stories belong, so that it's sort of rooted in authenticity and rooted in the reality of people they're talking about. This was like quickly. This was for Bond. Yeah, these are just. I just want to show some images so that you have context. This I created for a Fiji Women Fund, and they told me an amazing story about their interwoven relationship with mangroves and their ecosystem, and I sort of tried to convey that. Again, like this was Chipko moment. There was a time when a lot of trees were cut, and the rural women of Uttarakhand in India, they literally hugged the trees to save them from cutting. And I think that was such a loving and beautiful and strong and all kinds of brave gesture. So I had to draw it. And also I started, so this was for jazz, again for jazz, again for Frida. So one important thing that I want to, so like there are places where I have realized that it's not my story to tell. And what do I do? Because my experiences, my lived experiences are so different than their lived experiences, but I want to be a channel. I want to be a translator, a medium, but I don't, how do I keep my own biases away from the images that I'm painting? And it's so difficult and challenging. So, so far what I've tried to do is borrow their stories, you know, and just listen to them and talk to them and figure out what is the most amazing story to become a channel of. So in this case, this image is about the land struggle of Santhali community in India. Santhal is a place, and it's very rich in I think coal or something, and there's a lot of mining that happens. And when that happens, the people who belong there, they were displaced from that place. They were given a small house by government, or sometimes not even that, but they have such a strong connection with their land. And I cannot, I know I have felt it, because they have songs about their land, they have folk tales about their land, they have all these places where they go and worship, and they have rituals and all of that. So the relationship is so interwoven, and I had to create for that. And I was like, how do I convey this? It's so layered and amazing. And so I was, while researching about it, while talking to them, while listening to their stories, there was a folk tale which really struck me. They believe that there is a tortoise which lives under the earth, and which was the name of the film that I was creating the poster for. And if you like dig really deeper, which all the extraction was happening, and in that context, if you dig really deeper, the tortoise will get hurt. And so I something like that. And it was such a loving story about their land, which was constantly getting, extracted, and all of that was happening. And I realized that they have such a strong connection with their land. So I sort of like, I made that tortoise. I tried to portray that story, where there is a tortoise and their feet has roots. They do not want to uproot themselves, and essentially their connection with their land. This was also a very interesting story, and it's just an image for Urgent Action for Asian Pacific. And it's so when I travel, I notice something very interesting. There are areas where there are farms, and these are the areas where women are not allowed to own property. But there are farms, and they have the sari fences. Like, they have made fences with their saris, and these are like really long lands and really long stretch of saris making the fences, and it's of course a very beautiful sight. And I was talking to one of the landowners, and women are not allowed to own the land, but women are only people who are working on the land and who know the land so closely. And that area is like really full of women farmers, and they know how the land would react to certain chemicals. They know everything about it. They interact with the plants, they talk to the plants, they know which snake lives where, all of that. So they have such a close relationship with the land, but they are not legally allowed to own the land. And they have all these fences which are made by their saris, like stitching their saris together. So I was talking to this person, and she said that, it doesn't matter. I have this life I will live, and how does it matter who's, like, illegally whose property is this? Because this person doesn't know anything about it, and I know this land. I own this land in true understanding. And I was like, yeah, I mean, so there have been times where I have just borrowed somebody's story, and it has like really moved me, and I've tried to drop it somewhere for people to sort of peel the layers off and stuff like that. Another interesting question that I constantly ask myself, especially when I'm working with humanitarian organization, is can we reimagine another way of knowledge production and distribution? Because I see all these amazing knowledge products that they make, and most of the time, and I have to say that now a lot of organizations are working towards putting images there and making the information a little more demystified. But it's essentially, I would say that a lot of it is still, packed in shiny boxes of academia, so that it's so inaccessible for people who are not allowed to, people who you are talking about. And is there another way to? You may have a PhD paper, but that's can you imagine another way of probably writing a conference paper or something like that? Why can't it be a podcast? Why can't it be a audio product or a video product or a visual product? Why does it have to be? I don't want to go through a paper of, say, 50 pages. And it changes something when you're saying that. I mean, this is also very colonizing, where you sort of keep the knowledge away from the people where, like, whose information is it, where it actually belongs. So with that, and of course I do not have a perfect answer to that, but I have tried to work with some organizations and collaborate in a way. So this is a project with Oxfam, and I created like complicated layered landscapes with a lot of metaphors, so that it's, so for example, in this image there's a metaphor of building a bridge and broken bridges and people trying to put sort of like patch it and build it. So all of that, like in this image, it's about a journey and people sort of like trying to make that journey This is about decolonizing knowledge systems, indigenous worldviews, and all of that. And we started with this conversation that what if we can talk to a tree, and what if what will 100 years old tree would tell me if I can talk to it. So all of that, and a lot of cultures believe, and there are animal whisperers and tree whisperers. What is that ecosystem of change and all of that? So I started sort of like creating more complicated, more information-based images, which are which have a flow, which starts somewhere, which has a narrative. And it's sort of like, you have to look at it with a certain context in mind to sort of understand. And it does something. Maybe it's a step towards making all these huge, very patronizing, very scary papers a little less scary information, a little less scary. I also started working on how can we make infographics or data or numbers, more experiential. Like, we know a difference between an adult height and a child's height by experience, by looking at it. I don't have to calculate it in numbers. And what if bar graphs are made of these things which we know by experience, like probably a small cup and a 1 liter bottle, like something that we know by touch, by experience, by our lived experience, instead of just having those bar graphs and all of that. So like, it does something to democratize information, and that is very interesting to me. And there are some examples of how layered and interwoven and like really like something is happening. A lot of things are happening in one image. Of course, annual reports have also been one of a step in that, like how to sort of make a boring piece of information a little more interesting and accessible. These are some more, this is a little more technical. This is about how narratives are made, what is framing, what is storytelling, what is deep and meta narratives. And I have sort of described this and made this. I don't know if you know, but Joseph Campbell's has a narrative structure called Hero's Journey. So this was my take, like this was heroine's journey, where I have sort of mentioned that what can be a deep and meta narrative which will affect the story and all of that. So I have also used images to sort of make the information more friendly, look more friendly, and less daunting. So these are some examples of that. Recently, I've been working on a project.
Fiduci, sorry to interrupt. We're almost at the hour, and I just wanted to take a moment and pause. Anyone who does need to leave at the hour or the half hour, please go with our love and appreciation. Thank you for being with us. And for those who would like to stay and continue this amazing presentation and discussion to follow, you're more than welcome. I needed to pause there. Thank you, Fiduci. Sorry.
Amazing, and thank you for pausing. And I'm almost done. Like, this is just the last part, and I don't know, I think I spoke a lot. Anyway, I'll quickly sort of say that this is a project that I'm now working on, and this project has like really challenged me because it talks about really sensitive issues and really extreme violence. And these are the stories of people who are dealing with violence, like state level, like war, people who are victims of war, who have seen their family members getting shot right in front of their eyes, who have seen the generations never have time to, like their grandparents, grandma have never told them stories to their children. They've only told this happened and that happened and this person got arrested and all of that. So I have so for this especially for this project, I realized that what I can do, at least at this point, and with the level of understanding that I have, is I can portray feelings more than facts, because I don't know what their reality is like. And I have also done a lot of research. I have spoken to a couple of psychologists, to sort of understand what is the best way forward to represent a violence which is so extreme and not trigger people, not trigger people who have gone through a violence like this. So, and I realized that this is a good way, as of now, to sort of portray the feeling rather than what all happened, rather than portraying the events or the facts, just portraying the feeling of helplessness, or the feeling of, you know, going against the flow or walking on the eggshells or whatever was happening. So these are just some stories. This is just one person telling that her own mother was sort of stopping her. So this is one way of sort of making the childhood, the generational trauma visible, and all of that. And this is the checklist which you already know, which is there in your document. And that is the end of my presentation. I know I spoke a lot, and I'm very happy to hear from all of you, and thank you for staying.
Thank you so much, Vidushi. That was just amazing. That we could just feel your energy. You could feel the reflection, the curiosity, the humility that goes into doing the work that you're doing. I think for me, it's been very, very inspirational just to listen to what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I'm going to just open the floor directly to questions to anyone. Please unmute yourself and just ask any questions which have been running through your mind.
Hello, I'm just gonna start. I'm just gonna turn my camera on. Is it on? I think you can see me.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Hi everyone. Vidushi, I have to say, I find you so inspiring. I've been following your work on LinkedIn and on different places, and I'm really glad that I was able to join this session. First of all, I've never seen such a great representation of storytelling through visuals. That was really amazing. You spoke for a while, but I was captivated the whole way. And every time you showed a picture, it was just impossible for me to see the depths and layers and the thought that went into it until you described it. And then I was like, oh my God, right, there's that and that and that. And it just made me realize that it's not just about throwing some intersectional women, on a page and saying, great, the visual's done. So I find that really amazing. So I just wanted to say that was amazing. I loved it. I've learned a lot. And I wanted to ask a question. So I'm trying to explore a lot of creative avenues in my life right now. And one of them is illustrating. So I really want to become an illustrator. However, I'm not an artist. And I'm really at the beginning of the journey. And I find it very intimidating in a world where there are people who have experiences, like you, who have been illustrating, who are so knowledgeable over decades. And a world where now we have technology and AI that is stealing designs, that is creating their own. I just wonder, in your opinion, so 2 questions. One, what do you think the future of illustration is, especially inclusive illustration and storytelling, with this lens of what future tech, etc., is going to do? And secondly, if you could tell me a little bit about your process of becoming an illustrator. How did you start? What did it look like? If you have any suggestions for a budding designer, that would be great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Gail, for asking these questions and all your nice words about me. I loved it. I'll answer your second question first, because that's easier to answer, honestly. I think my process, and I totally understand when you say that you find it intimidating, because there was a time when I found it intimidating, and believe it or not, I felt that my skills are not amazing. I felt that there are so many people who draw better than me and all of that. But there came a point where I realized that I have a distinct voice and I have something to say. And I'm sure that's true for you as well, because your vantage point is different from my vantage point and from where I see the world. And yours will also be, everybody's is unique, right? So I'm sure that you have, just tell yourself that your voice matters and what you have to say matters. And sometimes it's not even about skills. It's about how, what you made me feel, right? Like what your image made me feel. So yeah, so I think skills are really overrated, and you anyway get it with time and practice. You just focus on what you have to say, and be authentic to whatever whatever is sort of boiling inside you. So that is one. And honestly, I have tried AI. I thought that, okay, let me give this, I don't know what was it, I forgot the name of that program, but I gave it like really dense, really layered brief to draw an image. And as of now, I don't think I'm intimidated by AI, because it's just so superficial. And there are so many things that it comes from lived experiences. It comes from being a human, and I always say that let's put some human in humanitarian, right? So and so much that I spoke about has this understanding that because this is all invisible, and you have to do something to make it visible. And I think it's very difficult for AI to, at least at this moment. And maybe in future, I don't know what is the future of AI. Right now, I'm too small to even predict that, right? So let's see what happens. Yeah.
Thanks, Vidushi. Sorry, do you mind also telling me a little bit about your process of how you became a designer? Did you start like drawing and then move to graphic design, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so I started with sort of being a designer first, and then I started drawing. So it was the other way around. I started drawing because because there were things that design or graphic design or the graphics wouldn't, like, it was limiting for me. And images and drawing the images gave me a better tool for storytelling. So that is why I transitioned into this. My process have been, so I started drawing, like I said, I started drawing whatever I saw around me, and whatever that little thing that I noticed, that the magic that I dropped something from my lived experience. And I think all the writers, all the authors, and all, they also say that talk about what you know best, talk about your lived experience, because you will be most authentic when you're talking about your experiences and your stories. And I truly believe that, so I started drawing that, and somehow I found my audience in doing whatever. I did not invent anything. I was just responding to whatever was happening around me.
Thanks, Gail, for the questions as well. Anyone else with questions for Vidushi?
Yeah. Hi, I'd like to come in. Hi, Vidushi. Thanks so much. I follow your work for a long time, and also recently discovered that 2 other colleagues do too. So we're like really excited, and just so you know, you're having a quite a large impact, I think, in this community. I wanted to ask, so yeah, at my job, we don't do much with illustrations. I would like to move that, but it's the same idea with just pictures. I feel in this space, it remains quite extractive. I wanted to ask if you were able to show your art back to the communities that share the stories, because in the end, that would be for me like the people who would judge it best, right? And then a second question is, in terms of your research process, how, I'm just wondering if you demand to talk, with the people that are involved, and how that works out, if it's always possible, and if not, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, these are some great questions. And I try to, if I'm drawing for somebody around me or for communities in India, I try to put it up there, show it to people, and just gather some conversation. Like, it's a great way to start a conversation, that this is what I made. What do you think about it? And they will ask some really amazing questions, that why did you draw me like this? All of that. And it's really interesting. And it's my favorite way to get into a conversation with people. Sometimes it's not possible. And I wish there was a way, but sometimes it's not possible. I try to. So in my research, in my process, there is a very important, step of primary research, where I try to either get on a Zoom call or get on a phone conversation, or just go and speak to them, or just hang out, like just be there in that space and just be around them. Again, this is not possible every time, since I have started working with organizations who are based overseas. So it's not possible all the time. Sometimes I speak to people who have been there, and I ask all kinds of stupid questions, all kinds of silly questions. And sometimes that is the primary research. But yeah.
Wonderful. There's a couple of comments also in the chat, but I just want to invite anyone else who has a question for Vidushi. Christine, do you have anything you would like to ask? You're fine? Okay, all right. What about you, Jennifer?
I'm just really grateful. I'm also really realizing that in Jaipur, you're getting close to potentially sleep time. So just feeling such intense gratitude. And yes, we have been admiring your work for a long time, and we are seeing the influence that you are having in the sector, and it brings us great joy, and it brings a tremendous amount of challenge to each of us in our organizations to really think about how do we work with the people who are thinking this deeply about representation, not just throwing something together for us, that are truly co-collaborators in how we express our values through our words and our images. Like, this is the alignment that I think so many people are longing for, and it's just beautiful to see it in action. So thank you for being that beacon, and and with such humility. I really appreciate how much you not only narrated your process today, but those challenges that you have incorporated into the work, and to bring more depth and more understanding. And I just, deep bow to you. Yeah, and with that, we need to close. Thank you so much for being here. Our next gathering is March 8th, second Wednesday of the month, every month. You are welcome anytime. We have wonderful guests like Vidushi, and we also do some creative practices together from time to time. So drop in anytime and explore and feel that freedom, and just please do check out all of the events in Healing Solidarity, including our space for Black and people of color, to have some space that's private and available to them. It's hosted by Sarah Diedro-Dorzao. Every month, you're welcome in that space. And if you have any suggestions for upcoming guests, if you are called to also lead a discussion with us in this year, please do reach out. We'd love always to be collaborating with all of you in this. And with that, thank you so much and hope to see you again soon. Take good care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Vidushi, thank you so much.